Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our event on animal welfare in the EU-Australia trade negotiations and the EU's role in commercial kangaroo hunting. The webinar is organized by Eurogroup for Animals with the support of the Intergroup of Animal Welfare and Eurogroup for Animals. Thank you very much for this. The second session will be hosted by my colleague Anja Hazekamp and will tackle the animal welfare, conservation, food safety and hygiene concerns over kangaroo hunting.
Thank you, Manuela. Good morning, everyone, and good evening for our Australian guests. Welcome to the second part of this event, in which we will focus on a specific aspect of the trade between EU and Australia. It's the trade in products derived from the commercial kangaroo hunting in Australia. My name is Anja Hazekamp. I'm the president of the Animal Welfare Intergroup, and I'm so thrilled to host this part of this event, as I consider this issue very, very relevant. In March 2018, I also hosted the screening of the documentary Kangaroo, A Love-Hate Story at the European Parliament. And three of the panelists that are with us today, Mick McIntyre, Mark Pearson, and Dr. Dror Ben-Ami, were in Brussels then to tell us about the problems with the kangaroo hunting in Australia. And at that time, I was so shocked to discover that we, European citizens, play a major role in the slaughtering of millions of wild kangaroos every year, as the EU is the biggest importer of kangaroo meat and skins in the world. The scientific bureau of my party, the Party for the Animals, decided then to contribute to the kangaroo meat analysis in the Netherlands that will be mentioned by our panelists. We found that the meat was contaminated, confirming similar results in Germany and Australia. But this is not only a health issue. It is first of all a cruel practice involving huge suffering and not corresponding to the already largely insufficient European and Australian animal welfare standards. Our panelists will explain why. Ilaria di Silvestre, a wildlife program leader at Eurogroup for Animals, will help moderate the debate. If you have questions to our panelists, please feel free to write them down in the Q&A box. Well, now I'm happy to introduce to you our first speaker, Mick McIntyre. He is the co-director of the documentary Kangaroo, A Love-Hate Story. Mick has spent 35 years in the film industry, where he combines his skills as a cinematographer with producing and directing. His work includes several award-winning feature films, including the movie Kangaroo, A Love-Hate Story, of which we now will see a short extract. Mick, nice to see you again. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Anja, and thank you so much for the invitation. Yes, I have been asked to show some clips from our film, Kangaroo, A Love-Hate Story. Some backgrounds: my partner Kate and I, we're independent filmmakers based here in Sydney, Australia, and we run a successful film production company. We have spent the last 6 years researching, filming, and releasing the film Kangaroo, A Love-Hate Story. When we started production, we were inundated with whistleblower accounts of people witnessing the commercial kangaroo shooters in action. And it was our job as filmmakers to put these eyewitness testimonies into the film. We also travelled extensively across Australia, interviewing key stakeholders involved with kangaroos. We interviewed farmers, politicians, commercial shooters, scientists, activists, and academics. And for those who have seen the film will know that all sides of the kangaroo issue are well represented in our 95-minute film. The film was released to rave reviews around the world, and it's won many awards, including being considered for the 2019 Academy Awards. The film, when it was released, shocked audiences all over the world. When the film was released in Europe, as you just heard from Anja, we were approached by Anja to screen the film in the EU Parliament. And from that screening, we were introduced to the Eurogroup for Animals, who are now releasing this report tonight. Two things that we exposed, or two things that we learned in the production of the film, and therefore exposed in the film, have caused the biggest reaction. The cruelty, the animal welfare aspects of the commercial killing of kangaroos, and, as Anja mentioned, the contamination of the kangaroo meat from the commercial kangaroo industry. So the 2-minute clip I'm about to show you are an example of these issues. In these clips, you'll see kangaroos being shot by commercial shooters, cut up and butchered in the dusty, dirty outback, heads and intestines left in the field, bodies of kangaroos left in the back of a truck for several hours in the heat. These are all things that we witnessed as in the making of this film. You'll see clips of baby joeys left to die beside their abandoned mothers, all as a result of the commercial killing of kangaroos. We have spared you the worst of the footage because we just didn't think we could show it to you tonight, but that is of the baby joeys being ripped from their mothers' pouches and bashed to death on the bull bars of the cars of the shooters. And all the clips you'll see are from the commercial shooting of kangaroos. Now, we've seen correspondence from the Australian government telling people that the commercial kangaroo industry is well regulated and follows a code of practice. Well, that wasn't our experience in making the film. I mean, we witnessed firsthand that it's almost impossible to monitor the commercial shooting of kangaroos. It's done at night, it's done in the middle of nowhere, and so it was our experience of witnessing no monitoring. Logistically, it is almost impossible to monitor the commercial shooting of kangaroos in the Australian bush. As I've mentioned, as professional filmmakers, it is our job to portray what we uncover. And we are very proud of the film's success. The film's trailer has been viewed more than 2 million times, and the film has been streamed by thousands of people online around the world. And we urge everyone to watch the film. And it is now available streaming on major sites like iTunes and Google Play. And finally, I'm just going to finish by saying we've also seen correspondence from the Australian government talking about our film, suggesting that the film does not represent the commercial kangaroo industry, that it is merely footage from recreational weekend hunters. I can assure the audience tonight that this is not true and is outrageous to suggest otherwise, and a blight on our reputation as professional filmmakers. Our film is the first time that people get to see eyewitness accounts of the commercial killing of kangaroos. We will now watch the 2-minute clips. Just give me a minute as I share my screen.
Thank you so much, Mick, for sharing this heartbreaking footage with us. I'm still speechless. And so I will immediately go to our next speaker. I would like to warmly welcome the Honourable Mark Pearson, my colleague and friend from the Animal Justice Party, a part of the growing movement of political parties that are working together on the rights of animals in politics, in public administration and in society. He is the first member of the Australian Parliament to be elected on an animal protection platform and a member of the New South Wales Council. He has been engaged in animal advocacy for 22 years, most recently lobbying against the kangaroo meat trade. Mark, good to see you again. The floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Great to see you, Anja, again. Well, what we're seeing is a wet market in Australia. This is Australia's wet market. And as you could just see from those short images, what you're seeing is a situation where animals are being shot, eviscerated, out in the open, at night time, temperatures up to 38 ambient degrees during summer. So how I first became, how this major issue first came to my attention was actually a kangaroo shooter. And then another kangaroo shooter contacted me and said, this industry is totally out of control. It cannot be regulated. And to quote him, listen, mate, if you're going to eat that kangaroo shit, you be crazy. Because the story is, and as was referred to briefly in the clip from the documentary, is that this is the reality. The shooter starts his truck at 6 p.m. He shoots his first kangaroo at 7 p.m., let's say, on a typical night of shooting. Cuts the head off. Why? Eviscerates the kangaroo on the back of his truck, cuts off parts of the legs, and that kangaroo stays hanging on the back of that truck for up to 12 to 14 hours, bouncing around with dust, with urine and feces from other animals and kangaroos blowing up behind the truck into the cavity of the kangaroo carcass, bouncing around for all those hours while he shoots another one, and then is the long 2 to 3, 4 hour trip to the chiller. And they get to the chiller, they must be at the chiller 1 hour after dawn. Wet market. You couldn't get any closer. In fact, it's probably even worse than some aspects of the wet market in Wuhan, Guangzhou, and Africa. So then the kangaroo gets put onto the truck. It can stay on that chiller truck, rammed in tightly. Dr. Dror has seen this, and I've seen this, where we open the doors of a chiller, which is really just an old shipping container, and the kangaroos bounce out towards you, all packed in, skin on skin. The temperature is supposed to reach 7 degrees or less for 2 weeks. It doesn't. It can't. Then a truck comes to pick up the kangaroos from the chiller and may travel for 2 to 3 days, apparently in a refrigerated truck, going to chiller to chiller to chiller and taking these carcasses to 2 of the major processing plants for exports. And because the contamination became so apparent through all of the tests that were done of E. coli, salmonella, they decided to pickle it with acetic acid. Now, acetic acid is just used to remove certain contaminations in abattoirs, but it's not a routine practice. And now, of course, because they knew acetic acid was going to be a problem for Europe, they're using lactic acid, which of course has been exposed in your report. So here is an industry which can't show the world what they're really doing to the kangaroos, because they're killing them in the outback, and they won't let us see the heads, which will show whether they've had a clean shot to the brain or not. But what the shooters have told me, no, they're shot in the jaw, they're shot in the neck, and this is why they cut off the head. It's the dirtiest, dark little secret of the great southern land. And it is a dangerous industry. It's even dangerous for the workers who are working in it by themselves in the outback, having to lift these heavy carcasses. You know, there's a situation which probably Dr. Dror will refer to. I think this is extremely telling of what this industry gets away with. Sometimes when we have a flood in Australia, we get a problem with kangaroos. They develop a disease which causes blindness. We still don't know what causes this blindness. But does the industry stop? No. They still shoot kangaroos, even though there's been an outbreak of something causing blindness, and they process them, send them off to Europe for consumption, and we don't know what that disease is. Now, if this was to happen to a herd of cattle in Australia or a mob of sheep, there is no way in the whole wide world would they allow those sheep to be put on truck and sent into slaughter if they were suffering from a disease or blindness where we don't even know what's causing it. It would be totally unacceptable on any standard of hygiene standards in Australia, around the world. But that is what is happening. So I'll be brief now. We took all this information to Russia and to Europe. I came to see Neil Parrish. I think he was a representative of the I forget his name now, Andrea Gabrielli. So this is way back in 2006, 2007. So that's when we made the first approaches to Europe. And there was clearly concern then. But obviously the evidence had to be built up over time, layer upon layer, not only in our backyard in Australia, but in the work you've done in Europe. But Russia, they took some tests of a shipment that arrived in Vladivostok, found high amount of salmonella, E. coli, feces, and antibiotic spray. So they shut down 75% of the imports, and they were the largest importer at the time. They were responsible for 70% of imports in 2008, and then in 2009 shut the whole industry imports into Russia. The main reason, I mean, they were concerned about welfare, but the main reason, and this was said very clearly to us by the head veterinarian who oversees Rosenkaltatsor, which is the umbrella body looking at hygiene and imports of meat and also animal welfare, was that we have to protect the citizens, the people of Russia, from a disease, an outbreak of something which could come as a consequence of this. So I am really grateful that we are actually having this conference, and extremely grateful that the report has now been released, which just corroborates the evidence we've been gathering since 2006, 14 years ago, and still, despite the industry being shocked, almost brought to its knees by the Russian ban, China not taking up imports, the industry, if they could get it right, even the hygiene part of it, you wouldn't be finding lactic acid in the meat in Europe. That's the measure of the danger of this export and import. And then, of course, the animal welfare side of it is just like the baby harp seals on the white snow being beaten to death, but that's in the broad daylight of day for the world to see. This is happening at a larger scale, as you saw in some images in the film, out in the outback, 300 or 400 kilometres away from any regulator, and that's the dirty, dark secret, which I'm begging the EU to put aside. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for your presentation. I have the great pleasure to introduce now to you our next speaker, Uncle Max Dulumunmun Harrison, who is an Aboriginal elder of the Yuin nation from the south coast of New South Wales. Uncle Max is highly respected teacher and leader in all aspects of Aboriginal culture. He has worked closely with the University of Technology Group Think, the think tank on kangaroos, on raising awareness about the importance and plight of kangaroos. He is also interviewed extensively on the subjects in the press and in the movie Kangaroo, A Love-Hate Story. Uncle Max will now introduce an indigenous perspective on the kangaroo industry. Please, Uncle Max, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Anja. Can you hear me? Thank you. I'm Mark, Mick, Dror. Look, kangaroos. We were eating kangaroos for thousands of years. But the reason that we ate kangaroos for thousands of years is because we never had refrigeration. So when we done a kill, the kangaroo was gone, and lots of parts of the kangaroo was utilized for many, many different artifacts. And because, as I said, when we done the kill, the meal was pretty well close to be cooked. So it never gave the kangaroo time to get how to get any disease. Because when the kangaroo did roam this country that's called Australia, there were no contaminations on the land as there is today. There are planes that drop I don't know what they drop, but you see it falling from the sky. Things to make the grass grow. So that the sheep and cattle can eat. But that's just like our bodies. When the kangaroo eats that, they become contaminated also. So it makes it hard for us indigenous people. We don't know where these things have been dropped around and baited around. It's such a horrific thing about this killing of the kangaroos. It's not killing, a slaughter. And a senseless slaughter, as you see in the film. See, we have many animals. And most of our animals, our Australian animals, have padded feet, not hooved feet, like cattle, sheep, goats, horses, and all those hard hoof animals. Now the horses was now passed in the New South Wales Parliament as an iconic animal. What a joke. And in the film you'll see, if you watch it, and when you watch it, you'll see this farmer there whinging about the kangaroo, ruining his land. And he's standing amongst sheep with dust flying up around him. The insanity of the thinking that these hard-hoof animals are a better replacement for the padded kangaroo. We lost millions of animals this year in the fires. Our dingoes are still been shot. And they should be put on the endangered species list. The kangaroo count is so false and is humane, or what they even think it is. So we have this iconic animal that's a symbol of the parliaments of this country, which seems to be a joke to me. The hypocrisy of it. A kangaroo one side of a shield and a emu the other side. But yet they're not being protected. This I cannot understand. This is something that really blows my 84-year-old mind away. The insanity of the reason of these things. But it's the cruelty and how it's done to take these iconic These are the iconic animals, not the hard-hoof animals who is endangering our rivers in our greatest sponge, the Snowy Mountains. It's cutting the water off. Hard-hoof animals, deer, cattle, goats. I don't know why I told you this, but I'm just telling you the hypocrisy of one animal to the other. See, our people were invaded. Now, our traditional animals are being invaded and killed and slaughtered. I've watched this, and I didn't know how I can talk to people. I didn't know who I could talk to. I was talking to deaf ears when I was talking, until I met a young man in the university. His name is Dror. Then I met another young man who made a film, and his name is Mick. And that's when I met Pearson. And I knew then that I could have a voice with these people. They took me to China to talk about the animals. And that's where I was questioned by one of the Chinese hierarchy men. I didn't know his status. And he said to me, "Why do you not want us to eat your kangaroo?" I said, "You would not want me to eat your panda bear, would you?" So I hope that something works over there just to stop the slaughter of these iconic indigenous animals. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Uncle Max, for not only showing us telling us about the hypocrisy and the cruelty of the kangaroo hunt, but also pointing out that the livestock industry is not only polluting our environment and threatening our biodiversity, but also threatens the indigenous culture. Thank you for that, and let me assure you that your voice is being heard.
Thank you.
Please now welcome our next speaker, Dr. Dror Ben-Ami, biologist specialized in wildlife and marsupials. Dror is the co-founder of THINK, the think tank for kangaroos at the University of Technology Sydney, the Center for Compassionate Conservation at UTS, and Compassionate Conservation Middle East at Tel Aviv University. Dror, it's great to see you again. You have 10 minutes to further explain the conservation, the welfare and hygiene issues related to the kangaroo industry.
Thank you, Anja. Big thank you to Uncle Max. Actually got a bit emotional hearing him speak. We've had a very long friendship that precedes kangaroos. Actually just trying learn from each other. I'm Jewish and he's Aboriginal, and we were trying to learn about each other's culture, and that's how it started. We've gone a long way together, teaching each other, I think, a little bit along the way. I think I've learned more. And also a big thank you to Mick and Kate, who you don't see there, but the other half, really putting everything on the line for this, bringing this dark secret, as Mark Pearson calls it, to the audiences in Europe and elsewhere. The risk is not just financial, it's also really physical, to be honest. It is a dangerous industry. I knew it before Mick knew it. I knew it because Mark Pearson knew it. When we worked together in the Outback and Mark wanted to show me what this secret was, and once he did, I never looked back. I'll just preface, a lot of what I want to say has kind of been said by the various speakers, so I don't need to go into great detail, but I will go into some numbers, which are interesting. But I want to say that the reason I got involved in this issue of kangaroos is because I come from a lab at the University of New South Wales. My supervisor was Dr. David Croft. My colleague, I think he's online here, Dr. Daniel Ramp, and several others, researchers. We specialize in kangaroos, and there are different species of kangaroos. And we had cumulative experience of probably now over 100 years of kangaroo research. And whilst we were told the kangaroos are pests, I mean, what we heard at university and in popular media, our science, the research that we were putting out from the university, from the research station that we have, which is a sheep station that has all the 4 kangaroo species on it, showed that kangaroos are not really competing with livestock, or very little, just in drought, for resources, which meant that the whole notion that kangaroos are overabundant, that they're pests, was really not based in fact, not based in science. We later found out that kangaroos are also not really reliant on water that much. Their populations are not influenced by the water sources for livestock. So that took away that element as well of saying, oh, because of us, there's so many kangaroos out there. And that is why we went on this long, long journey that started, for me, it started 13, 14 years ago, of saying we need to put the information out there, which is counter to Australian culture, about what the science is showing us about kangaroos. And we wanted also to show this information to countries around the world that were taking the kangaroo products, meat and skins, from Australia, because half of the products are in Australia and half are sold internationally. And that's how we got to where we are now. And I'll now just share my presentation. I won't go through all the slides, but I'll go through some of the things that I think are really important. And just give me a second as I share my screen. Can you see my screen? Am I shared? Yeah, okay. So just to go again, to show again that the Europe really is the biggest importer of kangaroo products in the world. More than half of what is being sent internationally, Belgium, Germany, Netherlands, France. And this is important because it's not only the amount, which is the greatest, but also the value. The value of the meat sold in Europe is substantially greater than, say, in Papua New Guinea or some of the other countries. And therefore, Europe is a very lucrative market, and also sets a certain standard of ethical standard. If Europe is okay with eating kangaroos, then it's okay for the rest of the world. A lot of the world is still oriented that way. And so we think that it's really important that Europeans, set an example of ethical engagement with wildlife that should not include eating wildlife. Eating wildlife, especially terrestrial wildlife, is a thing of the past almost. And so it's important that the Europeans take this on. The 4 species of kangaroos that are being commercially killed, it's not just one kangaroo. It's the eastern gray kangaroo, western gray kangaroo, red kangaroo, wallaroo. And therefore, when we say, oh, there are so many kangaroos, or oh, the numbers have dropped, it's not the one kangaroo. There are 4 different species, each with its unique habitat, each with its unique requirements. Some occur in large numbers, some occur in smaller numbers, and therefore it's important to realize there are 4 different species of kangaroos. At different points, there was real concern back in the 70s about the red kangaroo because it was being overly culled. There have been concerns about the wallaroo at different stages because it's an animal that's very it's cryptic. It's an animal that lives on its own, not in large groups, solitary, and therefore doesn't occur in high numbers. And quite occasionally, the shooting of these animals needs to stop in order to let them recover. Again, these are wildlife. And finally, in terms of the idea that kangaroos are overabundant, what we do know about kangaroos is that their populations are driven mostly by rainfall. So amount of rainfall determines how many kangaroos there will be in the landscape. It's the best predictor. Competition with sheep is negligible on account of a few studies. The culling of kangaroos on wool stations in particular, but also cattle stations, has been measured to have very little impact on productivity of the farm. In terms of the damage caused by kangaroos, the commercial damage caused by kangaroos to farms, because of the new data that has come out since the mid-90s, the assessment has dropped dramatically from 270 million Australian dollars per year to 40 million Australian dollars per year throughout the whole of Australia. And so that impact is not very great, considering Australia as a continent, the number of farms, etc. This is the largest commercial killing of wildlife in the world in terms of sustainability. Kangaroos are still there. I'm not saying that they've gone, but there's no other industry like it for terrestrial wildlife. The only comparable industry is that of fish in the ocean. Interestingly, as fish populations are disappearing, the sampling of kangaroos is not that different from fish. Fish, sampled from the ocean, a small sample presumably shows how many fish there are. With kangaroos, they're sampled from the air, and only a tiny amount of the actual population is seen or observed from the air, less than 1%. And from that, there are extrapolations to the scale, the size of the landscape. And we get from several hundred kangaroos, we might get several 100,000 kangaroos as an estimate. And these are the estimates that are being used to assess how many kangaroos are there and to determine the quotas of how many kangaroos should be killed. But to my mind and other biologists' mind, these estimates are not precise. They're actually quite inaccurate. Today, to save money, kangaroo populations are sampled once every 3 years, not every year as it used to be, and that increases the concern about their the population status, particularly because when there are years of drought, populations can drop by about 40% in less than half a year. And therefore, it's not okay to sample populations every 3 years and say that we have a sustainable and well-regulated industry in terms of conservation. Spoken a lot about the welfare of kangaroos. This is a huge issue from 2000 to 2009. 800,000 young kangaroos that are not part of the industry, they're just waste, were clubbed on the head or died of predation, dehydration, starvation as a consequence of killing mothers. In recent years, these numbers have dropped quite a bit because the kangaroo industry has taken on itself, not through government, to kill only males. But still, we have 200,000 young, about 200,000 young, this is an extrapolation, being killed in that same horrific manner every year. And by the way, this is now changing. The kangaroo industry, especially in New South Wales in particular, has given up, and now they're killing females again, so the numbers are going up. Let me remind you that the EU banned harp seals at the time when 300,000 harp seals in total were being killed per year. So we have, 800,000 to 200,000 young that are collateral waste being bludgeoned to death every year, and EU is taking on these kangaroos that are and causing that is a big part of that, the reason why this happens. I like to say that the kangaroo industry prides itself on a single shot to the brain, that shooters are trained. That is not exactly the case. I mean, they do have to pass a test, but even the RSPCA testing of top shooters, this is biased testing. The shooters know they're being tested, show that they're about 2% or so of kangaroos are being not shot in the head, missed shot, which would be about 50,000 kangaroos per year based on today's 1.6 million kangaroos killed per year. But when we've observed the number of kangaroos in chillers and the way that they were killed, we've had an expert estimate up to 400,000 kangaroos being killed, 40% of adult kangaroos not being shot in the head. And mind you that shooters are not inclined to bring in carcasses to the processing plants that have not been shot in the head because they're not accepted. So if you miss a kangaroo, it's much better to leave it in the field than to bring it in. So again, the numbers are probably higher than what we're showing you, and this is not a well-regulated industry, and there are indications that really there are horrific effects on adult kangaroos, not just the young. In terms of hygiene, Mark Pearson described it really well. There are multiple conditions of kangaroos in the field after drought and after wet seasons where they have multiple diseases causing blindness, neurological, other neurological issues. And kangaroos, they're still being processed. Well, we don't know what causes these conditions. We found in independent testing high levels of salmonella and E. coli that are indicators that the meat is super contaminated. Toxoplasmosis is also very frequent in kangaroo in kangaroo feces and in kangaroo, occasionally found in kangaroo meat, has affected individuals. And the reason this happens, as you saw in the video, during the gutting of the kangaroo in the field, some of the gut contents spill onto the muscle tissue. And this is when the contamination occurs. The shooters are not regulated in the field. They work in the dark. They're only minimally trained. They're not butchers. This is not even done in South Africa and Namibia, where there's also game meat. It's actually not done in Europe either, I don't think. The situation where minimally trained hunters eviscerate an animal and then are not regulated is unthinkable in today's terms of preserving hygiene and being on the lookout for pathogens. This should not happen, and it only happens really because the industry is trying to save money, not have refrigeration on trucks, not bringing in shot kangaroos to a central point where they can be supervised by butchers, as is being done in South Africa and Namibia. The hunters bring the animals, the large animals, to a central location, and then the butchering is supervised. This is a cowboy industry in Australia, and Europeans, the European Parliament, the EU Commission is, by allowing this to happen, is subjecting European citizens to great risk, in my opinion. Of course, you know that it was banned in Russia due to hygiene concerns. So lastly, I'm just about finished, but I want you to keep in mind that Australia has its own ethics. And until the 1970s, it was a whaling nation. Actually, for many years, over the last 150 years, whaling was the biggest industry in Australia. It was very profitable. Whale oil was profitable. And only when whales started disappearing from the oceans and became unprofitable that that the industry stopped. And then a subsequent inquiry then raised up the issues that Australia should be the nation to oppose whaling, and Australia decided to sue Japan for whaling. But what a hypocrisy. I mean, what's the difference between whaling and the kangaroo industry? I put to you that there is none, and it's just a matter of convenience. So thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you very much, Dror. Well, for showing us how inaccurate the population estimations are and how big the animal welfare issues, but also the hygiene problems with kangaroo meat are. This alone would be enough reason to ban the imports of kangaroo meat in the European Union, I say. Let me introduce our next speaker to you, Ilaria di Silvestre. She's a biologist. She specialized in wildlife conservation, and she is wildlife program leader at Eurogroup for Animals. Ilaria will present the role of the European Union in the commercial kangaroo hunting and launch Eurogroup for Animals' new report entitled Kangaroo from Australian Icon to Meat and Luxury Leather for the EU. Ilaria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anja, and good morning, everyone. And thank you to the previous speakers for the very interesting and informative information they shared. I will try to share my screen now. Okay. Okay, so I'm very pleased today to present our new report that it has been prepared in collaboration with several of our member organizations, which summarize a little bit the information that you've already heard this morning, present evidences, and also introduce our call for a new ban. The report is now available starting from today in our website. This is the link. Please download it and read it and share it. I will just present the main findings very quickly of the report. As mentioned by Dror, the EU is the main market for kangaroo exports, and for the meat, the main importers are Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, and France, while for the hides, skins, and leather, Italy and Germany are the main one. However, is all this meat that we are importing unhealthy meat? As mentioned by Dror again, this is not the case, but we wanted to test what was the situation here in Europe, and with support of our member organization, Gaia, Fondation Brigitte Bardot, Deutsche Tierschutzbund, and also with the Party of the Animals, Dutch Party of the Animals, which of course is not a member of Eurogroup. The test has been made in meat that was purchased in supermarkets and by retailers in Belgium, France, Germany, and the Netherlands. And in Germany and the Netherlands, the results show a contamination with Escherichia coli, and in all the samples, a high concentration of lactic acid has been identified. Now, lactic acid is nothing dangerous in se. It's naturally present in the meat. But at this concentration, this clearly indicates that it has been added, and as you heard before, lactic acid is added to wash the meat, and when it's highly contaminated. And indeed, EFSA stressed the fact that it should not be used to wash and in order to clean the highly contaminated meat, because it's not fully effective, as this result indeed shows, because contamination has been found also in meat that has been treated with lactic acid. So indeed, in Australia, most of the meat is used for pet food, while in Europe, 50% of the imported meat is used for human consumption, 50% for pet food. So it's not an healthy meat. Also from another point of view, Dror also mentioned the risk coming for fragments of bullets present in the meat. We found that this label in the meat purchased in France
warning consumers about the potential presence of fragments of bullets. And the bullets used in Australia are lead bullets. And we all know how toxic lead is for people's health and for the environment as well, to the point that several member states are banned the use of lead bullet, and the EU itself is really discussing exactly in these days a ban at EU level on the use of lead bullets. Now, coming to the letter, our Italian member organization, LAV, investigated with the manufacturers in Italy what was the reason why Kangaroo leather was used for high-performance sporting equipment or luxury product. And the manufacturers answered that Kangaroo leather is irrepressible for high performance, and because it's strong and light. So LAV wanted to test if this was true or not, and sent samples of an equivalent synthetic material to a certified laboratory to make some tests. And it was found that this was not true, because most of the quality of the Kangaroo leather were also present in the synthetic material. And if an NGO with, of course, a limited budget in a few samples already identified an acceptable substitute, the industry could definitely invest some more money to identify a very good substitute, even better, offering even better characteristics than the Kangaroo leather. So thanks to the campaign of our member organization, and also to the fact that Pro-Wildlife from Germany, it's a German NGO, joined the campaign, several supermarkets started to stop selling kangaroo meat. In Belgium, all supermarkets stopped selling kangaroo meat, several in France and Germany as well. Also some producer of pet food stopped to use meat, and some luxury manufacturers like PRADA, VERSACE, Ferragamo stopped to use kangaroo leather. These, of course, are very good news for kangaroos, but it can't be the solution. The solutions will only be a new ban. And the EU has all the mandate to adopt a restriction in products that are potentially dangerous to the health of EU citizens, like this meat. And also, what we have seen and heard this morning, it's not compatible with our standards and with our values, and indeed what is in our treaty. And because the treaty of the EU recognizes that animals are sentient beings and that we should pay full regard to their welfare. And there's also precedent for that, because the EU already adopted a ban on seafood exactly for animal welfare reason, and because it was impossible to substitute the way or to replace the way of killing with a more humane way, exactly as it happens with kangaroo hunting. So commercial kangaroo hunting is a particularly unhygienic and cruel industry, not complying with European animal welfare and sanitary standards. So we need a new ban on all goods derived from the hunting of kangaroos. Thank you for your attention, and please read our report, and in case of any question, we will be very happy to answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ilaria, for the presentation of the new report. I will definitely go read it later today, and I hope many of my colleagues will do so too. With us today are also some representatives of the European Commission. I'm sure the participants today are very interested in hearing what the Commission has to say on the issues that are raised. And we have heard serious concerns regarding food safety, animal welfare, regarding the imports of kangaroo meat. And what I'm really curious, what has the Commission done so far on this issue since it was raised in the Parliament several years ago? And personally, I think there are some similarities with the ethical concerns that the EU has expressed against the seal hunting. And it was already pointed out by Mark Pearson, by Dr. Dror Ben-Ami, by Ilaria di Silvestre. Both during the seal hunt and during the kangaroo hunt, the welfare of animals, especially very young animals, is severely affected. And does the Commission see possibilities to ban import of kangaroo meat based on ethical grounds? Or otherwise, do you see possibilities based on the hygiene problems with kangaroo meat? And do you think that the ongoing negotiations with Australia in the free trade agreement offer a concrete opportunity to address this issue? A lot of questions, so I don't know who is willing to answer, but maybe Nick Weller or Nicolas, please take the floor.
Hello, are you hearing acceptably well? Okay, so I mean, it is really very useful to get this information because, you know, we are in Brussels in an office and we do not get, we cannot go on the ground. Of course, we have our inspectors that go, and if
Nicolas, we cannot hear you anymore, so maybe there's a small issue with your mic. Can you double check? It was working at the beginning, but it has stopped working. Maybe my suggestion, Nicolas, could be that you quit the event and rejoin it. And in the meantime, maybe Anja, we could go to Joanna Granger for Australia, and then we could listen to the Commission afterwards.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a good suggestion. The representative of the Australian mission to the EU, Ms. Granger, please, can you give a reaction? Tell us your position.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Look, I listened with interest to all of the speakers talking about this important issue. It is the case that kangaroos are a much-loved icon of Australia. The Australian government and the Australian community take the welfare of kangaroos very seriously. We think there is a comprehensive legal framework and management approach by the Australian government and the state and territory governments to this important issue, and this information is publicly available. So, for instance, each state and territory that does look to export kangaroo product has a science-based management plan, and the monitoring and compliance frameworks for the animal welfare all demonstrate our strong commitment to a sustainable and humane harvest. And it's got lots of robust checks and balances. Importantly, there's been no adverse effect on the long-term kangaroo population have been identified, and that's after more than 30 years of a commercial kangaroo management. And obviously this time frame has included several periods of severe drought, and drought is obviously a major effect on kangaroo populations. In terms of the food safety issues that people have been raising, I would like to point to a recent audit by the European Commission that found that Australia's kangaroo industry meets the EU's stringent food safety and animal welfare requirements. I'd like to refer people to report DG Sante 2019-6679. That report is publicly available, and the kangaroo meat industry passed with flying colours. So it is the case that we do have robust checks and balances. It is important to understand that the kangaroo harvesting and processing export industry is subject to audits, just as like the one I've just talked about. That kangaroo meat is safe and wholesome to eat when it has been produced and handled in accordance with good manufacturing and hygienic practices. And it's important that these practices are maintained along the supply chain, including consumers following the cooking instructions. Obviously, the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment is the competent authority that oversights the export certification of this product. And through our certification and the checks and balances, we are confidently certifying that we are meeting the EU's stringent food safety and animal welfare requirements. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. We now try again Mr. Nicolas Guth from the European Commission. Please, can you tell us something about the audits and tell us why the results that are found by the Commission differ so much from the other findings we heard about in the presentation, and which were also done by certified laboratories?
I try again. Hello, do you hear at the moment? Is it better now?
Yes,
Thank you. It's working well now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. So I want to say there are two issues. The one is the legal framework, and then these animal welfare observations, which are also indeed striking. But from the legal possibility of the Commission, we have to take our EU legislation, and hunting is not regulated in the EU as well, and it is done by the member states. So for imports, we have some very basic rules on animal welfare for the killing and this part, but not for the raising and the housing. And this is well known, and so Stephanie said it in the beginning that the strongest tool is actually the killing part. So as indeed there was an audit last year, and it fulfilled the EU requirements. This is indeed the case. But of course, I mean, this is the records. You know how audits are done. Based on records, they go on the ground and they fulfill it. And of course, they are not there. They can only take a subsample, and of course, maybe they perform well during that time, but at other times not. But we have to take this objective audit as the the reference for the assessment. I want to say some word on this hygienic issue. The fact that there are some E. coli on the meat does not mean that it is not fulfilling the EU food safety requirements, because E. coli is an indicator on fresh meat, well understood, but it's not a food safety requirement. And if, as one can assume, there is a normal cooking or frying or what, there is no direct food safety risk more than with other meat that we consume. This is just for a basic clarification. So another issue is, I mean, immediately, as already in 2018, the issue was raised, and we have immediately asked clarification from Australia, from the competent authorities, and we have received always this information, and is also part of the audit which has been done. So on that basis, we would confirm that the Australian authorities have cooperated well with us in the terms of competent authorities. So in that respect, for the moment, we have not an objective basis for banning, for making a change. But so that's just an assessment that we have at this stage. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your clarifications. I hope that in the discussion maybe we can hear some answers about the banning of products on ethical grounds, like we did with the seal products, and maybe something about lactic acid. I now first go to Ilaria to see if there are some questions which he will moderate.
Yes, thank you, Anja, and thank you for the answer from the Commission. We consider that not all our issues have been answered indeed, and really invite you to read the report and the fact also that this meat is regularly washed with lactic acid, which should not be an addictive to the fresh game meat, according to the EU legislation, is also something that should be considered. In general, I think that the findings and the evidence we provided clearly show that there are issues. So if the audit didn't assess, didn't identify that issue, maybe it would be better to rediscuss and see why, because I mean, these are evidence that we provided today. especially about the animal welfare point of view and health as well. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to answer the question because we are very late, and we apologize for that. Maybe I can ask just one the question we received. I don't know who could answer, probably Dror. Is the fact that these animals are killed in so cruel a way is something that could be improved and then avoided without the need for a ban, but just simply maybe adopting a code of conduct, more strict code of conduct, or a training to the hunters, so that this can be addressed in some way, improving the method. Maybe Dror can answer, and I will ask, there's someone with the open microphone, maybe is Nicholas good? If you can close your microphone, please. Thank you very much. Dror, if you can answer.
I think this issue is similar to the harp seals and the difficulty with finding an alternative. The kangaroos are wild; they're not farmed, and the hunting occurs at night because that's when the kangaroos are active, and the conditions are such that it makes it very difficult to approach the animals. You cannot be captured physically, so they need to be shot from a distance. The industry attempted to not kill females, but still, you know, at its best, it had 200,000 joeys still dying as a consequence, and it doesn't work because if only males are killed, it actually in many cases it drives local populations up because it's the one big male that usually controls a whole mob of females, especially in eastern gray kangaroos. When that big male is killed, then the smaller males mate and then create more young. So it's not that's also not a practical solution for the industry and the farmers in particular. So I don't see a way around it. I can see a way of improving the hygiene element, certainly, but that would create a much increase in cost to the industry. Would need refrigeration, would need carcasses brought to collection centers with butchers, trained butchers on site. So that probably could improve.
Thank you, Dror. And the last quick question. We received can we get an answer from the Commission on what Anja asked about the position of an import ban, like for the import ban on seal products? Can maybe Nicholas answer this question? If there's a possibility to consider this for the same reason why the seal ban was adopted?
Yes. Can you hear again? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Of course, this can always be considered in general, as it was done for the seals, on ethical grounds, as it was said before. At the moment, there is no intention to do this. On DG Sante's side, that's what I have received. So far, it's not yet considered. As was already said, we see that Australia is cooperating to the extent possible. And also objectively, the audits, so they follow the procedures, at least in the audits, as we have seen. So that's the basis between competent authorities as we address it. If for political reasons, and there would be something, that's then another issue. But strictly from DG Sante's side, we think that we should resolve it on cooperation level to improve situations. And I also consider that Australia is open to do what they can do and to to improve wherever it is possible, although it is understood that kangaroos it's a wild in the same way as it's also wild in Europe. So it's more difficult than to have husbandry under as under farmers' conditions going to the slaughterhouse. That must be understood. So that's the current situation, what I can report. Yes, thank you. Well, maybe one point I missed to say something on this lactic acid issue. This is true. So at the moment, the imports should not have been treated with lactic acid, as it is not yet an approved decontaminant for kangaroo meat. So this, but we have no official testing from member states that would confirm this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting information. Thank you. And Anja, I guess we don't have time for any further questions because we are really already quite late. So maybe we should close. Up to you.
Well, maybe we can do one more question because I don't know what questions came in, but I saw a lot of interesting questions. Do you have one more, or shall we close the meeting?
Okay, no, we have one that is quite interesting indeed. Is if the Australian government are so confident that the code of conduct is being abided by, will they commit $1,000 to every wildlife carrier who has to raise a shooting orphan? As someone who lost my home and sanctuary in the bushfires, it isn't time to stop the slaughter until a real and accurate kangaroo count can be conducted. That's, I think it's an interesting point of view for someone that is living there and experiencing the issue. Maybe Joanna can answer. I don't know if it's an answer that you can provide, but what's your opinion on that?
That's really a matter that I think that person would need to raise with the Australian government and their local members of parliament. That's not a matter I can comment on.
I could certainly comment on it if you like. I mean, it's extraordinary to think that we lost so many millions and billions of animals during the drought and then the fires. And yet, without us even knowing how many animals are left, including obviously kangaroos, it is unconscionable for the government, whether federal or state or territory, to continue to issue permits to kill and harm kangaroos. I mean, Animals Australia and also myself and animal organisations have written to the relevant ministers to say, to ask them to just hold a moratorium on the killing of these kangaroos until we know what devastation has occurred for them. I mean, that's a measure of the insensitivity and the illogic way that the industry functions. So the fact that that hasn't been taken up is extraordinary.
I can just comment on that bit. Thank you so much. I was understanding the question perhaps incorrectly. It is the case that state and territories who undertake state management plans do an annual population survey, and they do adjust these. So for the callers on the line and people interested today, I can let people know that state and territory governments have been considering their management plans and adjusting them accordingly in cases where local kangaroo populations were adversely affected by the fires. And more generally, the state governments do adjust their harvest quotas and areas from time to time to ensure that the harvest remains sustainable. So some examples of that is two states reduced the kangaroo harvest quotas in November. That was happening in Australia at that time. And one of those was also reducing the area of the permitted harvest zone. I understand that South Australia and Victoria in particular looked again following the bushfires in relation to the annual harvest quotas and the population management. So it is a nimble process. It's a case where it's not set and forget. The state management plans are being actively monitored, and there has actually been a response in relation to the commercial cull from that.
Can I just jump in there and just state that the government of New South Wales, which was drastically affected by the fires, 25% of New South Wales bushland was destroyed by the fires. That is kangaroo habitat. And I can just say that the 2020 quota by the New South Wales government increased from the 2019 quota. I'd just like to point that out. So basically, after the recent fires of last summer, the New South Wales government announced an increased quota. I'd just like to point that out. Thanks.
Thank you, Mick.
Thank you.
And that says it all, I think, when you really look at it.
No, I agree. It doesn't make any sense, and I think we could discuss for this about this topic for many more hours, but our time is running out. So I would like to close this meeting, but not before saying a few words. First of all, a huge thank you to all panelists for taking the time to be with us today and for your excellent presentations. Thank you to all participants for attending and asking questions. Of course, thanks to the Animal Welfare Intergroup and Eurogroup for Animals and my co-host Manuela Ripa. It is vital that the EU-Australia Free Trade Agreements include strong commitments to the protection of farmed animals, as well as domestic wildlife and their habitats. And today we spoke about several animal welfare issues, such as mulesing, the use of battery cages for laying hens, and of course the kangaroo hunting. But a lot of other topics could be addressed here in the EU trade agreement with Australia, such as, for instance, the lack of protection of Australia's shark populations and other marine wildlife. The continued use of shark nets and drumlines, for instance, pose a threat to marine wildlife. And I can continue. There are so many topics, but let's go back to the kangaroos. Our speakers today have described barbaric practice happening in remote Australia. But the European Union plays a major role in this as the biggest importer of these products. The food safety issues mentioned includes sanitary risks that need to be re-evaluated, especially in the light of what current COVID-19 crisis should have taught us. Furthermore, the abuse and exploitation of kangaroos and their babies is, in my view, unacceptable. It is time for the European Union to confirm its leadership in terms of animal welfare and food safety standards. And I think the only way to do that is by introducing an import ban on kangaroo products. The European Commission said, well, we have no intention to do this. I would add the word yet. We cannot let these animals suffer any longer in return for some short-term economic profit. Enough is enough. Thank you all. Have a very good day or very good evening. And I hope to see you soon again. Bye-bye.